Hi everyone, Dr. Suneel Dhand, medical doctor. Welcome to another video. Let's talk about the National Health Service because I know I have a lot of viewers in the United Kingdom, the country where I grew up, where I trained, where I went to medical school. And stories from the NHS are always fascinating when I hear them because they're very typical of a system which is absolutely huge, which is bloated to the absolute hilt with bureaucracy. And I'm sure a lot of these stories could apply to other countries as well, including Ireland and perhaps some other Western European countries. But I am regularly in contact with the NHS because I'm hearing stories all the time from close family and friends who still reside in the United Kingdom. And don't get me wrong, I will always have some attachment, obviously, to the NHS because I grew up with that system. I have great memories seeing our family doctor. And even when I was growing up, things were nowhere near as bad as they are now. It was very easy to get GP appointments. And as far as I can remember, things were done much more quickly than they are right now. For a variety of reasons, the NHS has gone completely downhill over the last few years. And what I'm about to say is not meant to take away from the good-hearted people who work in the NHS. I have family and friends who work in the National Health Service. Of course, it employs millions and millions of people. But I want to share with you three recent stories which are really typical of the NHS and how the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. It is crazy the amount of bureaucracy and the amount of roadblocks there are to improving the system. So here we go. These are three personal stories from family and friends. First story is about a lab test that was needed. And I have a family member who was in with a consultant, an attending physician. And the attending said, well, you need this lab test, but unfortunately, it's going to take some time. You can't go today. It's very busy. So you'll have to come back tomorrow or in a few days' time and get the lab test done. So the family of member of mine walked out of the clinic and walked towards the lab. And by chance, happened to see someone at the lab and said, hey, this is what the consultant just told me. And I wanted to know when I should come back. And the person in the lab kind of just sort of shook his head and said, don't worry, look, can you see the waiting room here? It's completely empty. Of course we have space. Come on and get your lab done now. So she got her lab done, and then she actually went back to the clinic to tell the consultant that this was what happened. And the consultant shook his head as well and said, you know what? I know our system is a complete mess, but the minute that I try to raise this as an issue or improve the system, everybody is up in arms saying that I'm accusing people of being lazy. But yes, totally. The lab had plenty of space for you today, but officially in the computer, they did not. But I'm glad that you had your lab test done. Think about that. Maybe many of you who have experiences with the NHS have similar stories to tell. Number two, a close family member of mine who had double knee replacement surgery, which is obviously a major thing to go through. Bilateral arthritis and did require knee replacements. And the decision was made, and she agreed to it as well, to have the double knee replacement done at the same time, rather than have one knee replacement done and then another knee replacement after a few months. So the waiting list was fairly long. It took a good few months, and went in for surgery. And the surgery, actually two fairly experienced surgeons did the bilateral knee replacement. But anybody who is in medicine, and especially anybody who is in orthopedics, knows that it's not always so much about the skills of the surgeons, but the rehabilitation. That is absolute key to anybody recovering from orthopedic surgery. So that is why, at least my experience in the United States, orthopedic surgeons are fairly aggressive, as they should be, about getting physical therapy. Sometimes it's even on the same day because you have to get that joint moving as soon as possible. So this family member of mine had bilateral knee replacements. And would you believe that, yes, she got some physiotherapy in the hospital, but as soon as she left, there was no physical therapy arranged. And it was a big fight to get physical therapy. And in the end, she got some private physiotherapy. So a physical therapist came to the house to continue the rehabilitation. And thankfully, she was very motivated and wanted to get moving as soon as possible and recovered within a few months from this quite major surgery. But it was a real struggle to get physiotherapy after a double knee replacement. Can you imagine that? Going through that surgery and then something like physiotherapy is not all in place. And she was assured before she left the hospital that this would all be arranged and there would be a physical therapist who would come out to the house, and if necessary, some physiotherapy would be performed in the hospital. But it was not easy at all. And in the end, private physiotherapy was what was needed to recover from this knee surgery that was done on the NHS. So that is the second story that I wanted to share with you. And for all my viewers in the United Kingdom, I'm going to interrupt for a moment. Most of you have already seen the company that I co-founded making natural supplements in the United States, but they are now going to be made available more locally in the United Kingdom. They won't need to be shipped from the United States. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please click on the link down below. And the third recent story I want to share with you is a family member who was in the emergency room, the accident and emergency A&E in the United Kingdom, and needed an imaging test done. And unfortunately, staffing was very short, as it often is. And one of her relatives went down to the radiology room and asked them if they were free to do the x-ray. And they said they were. And then he actually came back and he transported her himself on the bed to the radiology department. And they happily did the imaging test. And then he brought her back. But I could not imagine that happening in the United States. Obviously, there might be more rules and regulations about who transports people. It has to be a member of staff. But when I was told that story, I thought, my goodness, imagine a family member having to do that. And the radiology department, no questions asked, because they were not doing any imaging procedures at the time. And he just went to ask them if they had a slot available, and he happily transported his relative himself. Think about that. So I would like anyone in the United Kingdom who has similar stories to tell. And I know everybody in the UK probably has 1,000,001 different stories about their experiences with the NHS. And again, this is not to say that all of the people who work in the NHS who are very dedicated aren't trying their best to do their jobs. But from what I hear, and I left the NHS some time ago, it has got so bad in terms of bureaucracy, in terms of all of these different parts that aren't communicating with each other. And this is also something I would like to mention to all of my viewers in the United States as well, because I know that our system here in America is a complete and utter mess. But we have to think very, very carefully if complete socialized medicine like the NHS, which is one of the most centrally controlled healthcare organizations in the world, would necessarily be a good model, because I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be compatible either with the US mentality, customer service mentality, and wanting choice, etc. But I'm sure the United States healthcare system as it exists now is not going to exist the same way in a few years' time, because everything is kind of imploding. But the question is, where do we want to go? I think a hybrid model, something like Australia, might be a better option. I actually worked in Australia during my final year of medical school. I did an elective in Adelaide, South Australia. And even back then, they had an excellent healthcare system. Of course, it's not without its problems, like any health system. And in fact, if anyone out there is watching in Australia, feel free to say hi below and comment. But from everything we hear, you have a very good mix of public and private. Okay, everyone, thanks for watching. I wanted to share those stories with you. Again, feel free to comment down below. Check out the links in the description down below. Once more, for everyone in the United Kingdom, if you're interested in my natural supplement, now it is locally available in the UK. Link is down below. Also check out the links down below for my website, the other work I do, and my free newsletter. If you're not already signed up for that, please do so. Hit the like button if you like this video, and the subscribe button for more similar videos in the future. We will speak again very soon.